Inside Vision is brought to you by New England College of Optometry and Sector Media Group.
And good morning, everybody. You are live on the first episode of Inside Vision. I'm Eric Lilligren, and standing by in Boston is Howard Purcell. Good morning, Howard.
Good morning, Eric. How's it going? I'm really happy to be here with you this morning on our first episode of Inside Vision. Thrilled to be with everybody. And, I just want to kick it off by saying this. You and I had spent some time thinking about what small role could we play in bringing some information to the industry that has been so good to us and that we know and love so well. And I'm really excited to have the opportunity to bring some timely information to our audiences, things that I know they're thinking about, things that I know are on their mind, and ways that we can bring some really actionable type of information to everybody. Start your day off on the right foot. So our intention is to bring you the best and the brightest that we have, both inside our industry and outside of our industry. We're going to cover those relevant issues, as I mentioned, that are important to you, both in your practice, in the industry side, in the employer side, and the media side. Anything we can do to continue to help you to really not just about for us the here and now, but the here and when. I think it's coming, man. It's absolutely coming. And I think before we go any further, look, we need to acknowledge that, the issues that are out there right now, our hearts go out to people who are suffering from this coronavirus, particularly those who have health issues regarding it. I know it's affected everybody, but look, we're going to try to be positive here every morning. We're going to talk about how we come out of this, strong. And honestly, I cannot think of a better way to kick it off than the two guests we have today. In my mind, two of the smartest minds, and I know I'm going to insult some people that I know, but two of the smartest minds we have in marketing in this industry. I've worked with some wonderful people, some great marketers, but these two people for me are really, the ones who really, for me, I've learned the most from and who have helped me in my career. And I know they're going to provide some great information to the group today. So Eric, thrilled to be here with you.
Likewise.
Excited about delivering some of this good information. And maybe if you let me, I'd like to just kick it off with just a couple of thoughts. I was on a show with Gary Gerber. Gary does a power hour. It's on Wednesday nights. You guys need to listen to that. It's actually
a great show.
He does a really nice job with it. And a couple weeks ago, he brought on a bunch of us to try to talk a little bit about kind of, how we come out of this, where we're going, what kinds of things we think are important to be thinking about today. And I wanted to share a list that I had come up with. Before I do that, too, one other thing, and I know you want to do this too, Eric. Shout out to our friends at Jobson. They have been incredibly supportive of this. We could not do it without them. I want to mention Mark Ferrara, Marge Axelrad, Nancy Ness. Those guys have been outstanding and incredible to us, encouraging us.
On a daily basis, giving great information. And it's the first thing I look at every morning is Vmail. And, the stories and information that are in there are really helpful to everybody. So, yes, thank you to all of them.
Couldn't agree more, and I do want to make sure that they know how much we appreciate what they're doing. So that said, I want to just go through, maybe a good way to kick this off is just to go through this list that I'd come up with, the kind of 10 things that I think people need to think about, and I think it's a good segue into our discussions with Dave and Carl. So first of all, what you do now matters, and I'd love to talk to our guests about that because we can wait until we start to come out of this and things start to return to some semblance of normalcy. But in my opinion, and I think this is shared by you, Eric, because we've had this discussion, we need to deal with those things now. What we do now will likely impact our success and our growth over the next couple of years, candidly. So looking forward to hearing from our guests in terms of their opinions on that.
For sure. I mean, the element that I focus on with regard to that is time. Something that our ECP friends and everybody in business is always at a lack of in the normal world is time. And right now it's when we're all captured in our homes and elsewhere, time is what we have. So it's how you use it that matters. And I agree with you.
No question. And we have so many practitioners, colleagues of mine out there. They're so driven in their practice. They're continuing to upgrade and adapt and adjust. And I think, Dave Brown and his team at IDOC do a great job of continuing to support them. But we have so many motivated doctors. And I know right now it's just tough. There's so much on our mind. There's so many things going on around us in our world. But keeping that focus, staying driven. And that's why, the second one for me is being that source of information and education. There's so many issues out there regarding contact lenses.
For patients,
should I wear a lens? Yeah, for patients. Be the source of that information. Be that driving force. So they know you're the person to go to for that information. You can't abandon your patients. I mean, look, number one, and it's for us too at the college, it's about the safety and health and well-being of our faculty, our students, our staff. But at the same time, we can't abandon our patients. And you know what? There's even things that we can do, the small role we can play. People who have emergencies, eye emergencies, last thing we want to do is see them showing up in an emergency room, right? I mean, we know what's going on at emergency rooms around the country, around the world right now. We can play our small part in keeping them out. So telehealth, for us at least, has become a key piece. And I hope perhaps we can talk a little bit about that at some future time, but it becomes a great way. And I'm not suggesting we're doing comprehensive eye exams through telehealth. I'm suggesting we triage. I'm suggesting we use it as a tool to make sure our patients know they can get to us. If they have a problem, that we're there for them. And that's just so critically important today in this world where there's so much uncertainty.
And in that vein, right now, communication itself, you could view as marketing. And I think some people have a cynical view of marketing and marketers in general, but really in this environment, it's about communication and staying in touch with that patient or with that account if you're on the industry side, and reaching practices as your accounts. It's all about communication and how can somebody help and how can we take pressure off the larger situation.
Couldn't agree more. And you know, we're not great marketers. If we talk about the eye care community, I mean, let's face it, we spend our time learning, and we're graduating today some of the best and brightest clinicians we've ever graduated. But we're not very good at marketing. And that's why we lean on guys like Carl and Dave that we're going to introduce in a minute to really help us through and navigate. It's complex. There's no question. Number 4 for me is be human. You know, we see a lot of commercials today, and I don't know about you, but when I watch a commercial, if they're not addressing what's going on in the world, it just seems odd to me, like they're not really in touch with what's going on.
It's tone deaf if you're not acknowledging it, correct?
Yeah, and I think it's that delicate balance. Again, looking forward to hearing from our guests, but I think it's that delicate balance that you have to create by not overwhelming people with the negativity, but at least acknowledging it, recognizing that this is going on in our world, and then trying to move forward from there. So I think being human is important, and acknowledging the situation that we're in. You know, use our industry colleagues in a way that could be beneficial. So many of the industry right now is reaching out to practitioners, trying to support them in so many different ways. I see what Dave's doing at IDOC. I see what so many other groups are doing and trying to support people and encourage them and use this time to support them. Look out at what's out there. Try to determine what's out there that can help support you. I think that's really important. And you know what? And Eric, I'm sure you can have something to say about this. Be okay with change. I mean, right now, it's almost daily that we're learning more about what's going on. And if you're not comfortable with adjusting and adapting and changing right now, boy, that's tough. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, it's just, you know,
absolutely.
You can't be flexible.
I mean, we're all going to come out on the other side of the major hurdles here with an entirely different landscape. And I think ECPs across the country are feeling that and wondering where do they play an active role in the immediate comeback. And I think to your point on this episode, which is the key elements to marketing your way back, or as I might say, the key elements to communicating your way back is in preparation of that and trying to figure out, you know, where exactly the shifts are going to be and what elements are going to be most important relevant to an eye care practice.
Absolutely. And then, you know, there's certain things you're going to be able to do in your practice. And one idea that came up, and I just want to share it, is expanding your hours. I mean, we have to assume when we come back, it's not going to be all in. There's going to be some trickle that's likely to take place. One simple way, expand your hours, seeing the same number of patients, but you may have to expand your hours in order to be able to have a chance to see the same number of patients. And I know that's not a great thing for practitioners, but you know, when coming back and accommodating our patients in a way that makes sense probably is the right way to go. And
not to mention the backlog of patients that are not being seen right now that had their appointments scheduled for this week, next week, for the last month. You know, in an average practice, that might be 100 patients for a single doctor practice, or many hundreds of patients for multiple doctor practices. And doing the catch-up and the continuous flow will definitely be a challenge, especially if, you know, there's social distancing and as they're spaced farther apart. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we have to assume that's going to be the case. I mean, if you listen to any of the experts, they're talking about this isn't going to be a light switch we flip on and all of a sudden we go back to normal. Perhaps we'll be wearing, you know, our PPE. Perhaps we'll be having to separate more, and I think that's likely. So we need to prepare for that. And finally, you know, you need to be clear and loud about the protection and the efforts you're making to make sure people stay safe in the practice. I don't think people are going to feel comfortable coming back unless they hear that from us, unless they understand these are the things we're doing. And that ultimately will be a partnership between the industry, the employers, the media, and us. I mean, there was a story yesterday on the Today Show. It was really interesting, comparing sort of optometry to restaurants. And it was amazing that they used optometry as the example. And it basically said optometry is going to be able to come back a lot faster than, for example, a restaurant would, because there aren't as many people in one place at the same time. And I thought it was a great story. And I think it motivated all of us to say, we have a role to play. We can play that role. It may not be exactly the same as it was, but we have a role to play, and let's be driven to make sure we're doing it and doing it the right way. And to me, part of that has to be that we make sure our patients feel comfortable, but we're taking those precautions, protecting ourselves, our staff, and our patients.
Well, I'm not surprised that eye care professionals or optometrists were identified by the show as being a key component, or somebody that's going to come back maybe faster than others, because after all, they're healthcare professionals. This is part of the equation. There's a big puzzle to put together here. There's a lot of testing to be done. If you look at the big picture, we're talking about nationally trying to test a lot of people. I wonder if there might be adoption of different healthcare sectors that participate in that. Just speculation on my part, but something that I've been thinking about as far as communication with patients.
Without a doubt, and that will continue to be a critical component to what we're going to do. So that said, I'm going to throw it to you and let you introduce our guests. You'll take one, I'll take the other. How's that?
Sounds good. I'm happy to introduce these people. We've got Dave Brown from IDOC, CEO there. Dave, how are you this morning?
Doing great. Thanks for being here. You guys are doing great work, and very excited to be on the very first InsideVision.
Oh, thanks so much. I know you spent decades at Johnson & Johnson, and you've got a wide variety of experience in the industry, so we're glad to have you.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I'll add my welcomes. Dave and I have been friends for a long time, and to me, as I said earlier, one of the smartest minds we have in marketing, and as the leader of IDOC, he's done an outstanding job. They're the number one, the largest private independent consortium or collateral of optometrists, and do a great job in supporting independent practice, and have a great team that he's surrounded himself with. So these alliances we have out there, to me, are one of the real strengths of our profession. So welcome to Dave. And if you're okay, Eric, I'll introduce Carl Bracy.
Sure.
Carl had served as the CMO, Chief Marketing Officer at Essilor. I spent 10 years working side by side with Carl. I learned so much from Carl during my time there, and Carl's contributions to the success of not only Essilor, but he has some background at P&G, at Procter & Gamble, where he brought just a great deal of foundational marketing experience. One of the smartest guys I know. And what maybe a lot of people don't know about Carl is Think About Your Eyes, which is something that has become now a national campaign supported by the AOA and so many others. The campaign that this profession has said is wanted since my father started practice, to be honest, maybe 40 years ago. We need a campaign. We need to get out there and talk to the consumers about the importance of the eye exam. What a lot of people don't know is this guy right here, Carl Bracy, was really the brains, he and his team, behind Think About Your Eyes. Tested it in Tarrant County and the Dallas-Fort Worth area, was able to show this thing really made a difference. And Carl, I don't think you get the credit, and I know you're a humble guy, but I just want to let everybody know you're the man that started it. You're the reason we have Think About Your Eyes. Thank you for being here, and thank you for everything you've done for our profession.
Thanks, Howard. It's great to be here. Very kind words. I appreciate it.
Welcome, Carl.
True words, I will say. So why don't we get started? I mean, you heard Eric and I chatting a little bit about some of the things that, at least our observations about some of the things going on out there. But marketing is such a critical component, and in general, practitioners in particular, but we've got a wide audience. We've got industry people, we've got media, we've got employers, but practitioners in general, we're just not that great at marketing. It's not a skill set we bring to the table. So maybe, Carl, you could kick it off. Why at a time like this is marketing so important? What is it, why does it matter? And, we made the comment that it's critically important we start thinking about it now. What is it about marketing, and why do you think it's important? And how do we start to look at that in an environment that we're dealing with?
No, thanks, Howard. I mean, I think the first thing is we should probably get all on the same page of what we think about as marketing. Okay, so Howard mentioned before that I have some Procter background, came from a brand management background. So in our world, marketing is everything you do as a practice. It's not just that flyer that you stick on the doorstep of the neighbor's house by your practice, okay? It's everything, all the way from how your patient becomes aware of your practice, all the way through their experience at the practice, all the way to follow-up and rescheduling. That is all marketing. So to me, it's asking the question, why is marketing important right now? It's kind of like, why is your practice important right now? Well, it's a patient journey. So I think if I were to give a soundbite, I'd say, know your patient journey right now, because that could be changing. And if you know all the elements of your patient journey, I think you yourself sitting down with your staff can say, hey, what might be affected that we may want to change, and keep it current with the situation that's going on. So to me, marketing expands everything, all the way from the beginning to the very end. And of course, that's important right now. So.
Yeah, and maybe just a quick follow-up on that. So, I've heard the term, the journey, the marketing journey quite a bit, and I think it's a term in the industry side we talk a lot about. Just break it down real quick for us for a moment. What is the journey? When I'm looking at my practice, what am I, and you started to talk about it, I think, from the time they perhaps communicate with the practice, or maybe even before that. Can you just, and I know it's a fairly detailed and complex issue, but what is that journey?
Yeah, one of the things with marketing do is we tend to get jargony. So I'm going to try, thank you, Howard. I'm going to try not to get, when I look at the journey, everything, every business you interact with, every medical profession you interact with, you have a journey from where you first became aware of your need, all the way through your interaction with them, the buying situation, the billing result, the handling, follow-up, rescheduling. It's an entire journey, okay? So marketing kind of encompasses all of those things. So when I look at it, you could have a journey when you go to an ice cream store. So you can probably, as an owner of a practice or as a student, you probably can understand what your journey might be with everybody that you interact with. So I would suggest that right now is a good time to kind of map out that journey of your practice, maybe the way it was before, and then you can start understanding what elements of that journey might be affected by our current situation as people come back with, the inevitable change in behaviors that they're going to have. So when I use that word journey, I'm talking about everything. We marketing sometimes think about it as just the awareness. We do marketing so people become aware of us. It's much more than that. We make sure that the entire journey screams what differentiates our practice versus others, and make sure that we understand what we stand for, and that entire journey should communicate that.
Dave, I'm curious what you're hearing from your members about how they're approaching these times right now. What are they doing in terms of communicating to patients? What are those patients saying back? How much interaction is there, and how much engagement is there from the patient community to one of your typical members?
Yeah, thanks, Eric. We've been getting on a lot of phone calls, having virtual meetings at night with a lot of our members, and I've been sitting on most of them, and it's been great to hear what they're doing. And I'd echo what Carl said. It is about the journey. It's about thinking about the mindset of where the consumer is at. And so it's communicating things like rescheduling, potentially reopening. Safety, as you said, Howard, is going to be really, really important. Some of the things that doctors are starting to think about. I've heard doctors talk about reaching out to their key customers, or reaching out to and actually making phone calls or emails, or so communicating, which is what you said, Eric, about marketing, is really, really critical here. Staying in touch. Do not be quiet. When you're quiet, people start going, what happened to Dr. Brown? What's going on? You've got to be communicating, and even more so now than ever.
Is there a sense of where in the patient's mind their eye care, the eye care element of their life is in relation to everything that is going on? I'm sure there's varying degrees of that. Patients obviously have urgent needs, but what about that just typical, once a year patient or once every other year patient? What's the right dialogue, or what's the right level of communication there, would you say?
Yeah, I think and Jobson, as Howard said, is doing a wonderful job. They just had their 5th wave come out, and I've seen some things about consumers too. I think you've got a situation where you're almost in a 50-50 world. You've got people who want to come back in, or they need to see. It's a wonderful thing about eye care. But I think you've got others who are going to be cautious. So marketing and talking about the ways, as Howard said, that you might be doing less in your practice at one time. I've heard doctors talk about, I'm going to move chairs apart for some distancing. But I think consumers are watching. I think people are going to be in different mindsets. So you have to be very aware of people who maybe lost their job, or they're worried about their insurance.
Right.
So mindsets are going to be very different, which I think is going to have to be part of any marketing message, is understand people are going to be in different stages of their journey.
Yeah, let me jump in here a minute. And I love you, Dave, but I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit. You've used the term consumer, customers a lot. And, the practitioners, we like to avoid those words. But coming from a marketer, I think it's critically important. Just speak to just a minute about that, because I know early in the game, I made those kind of comments as well, talked about consumers, talked about customers, because Carl and you taught me a lot about that and looking at it from that viewpoint. But maybe just address for a minute the people who get a little bit weary when we start talking consumer and customer versus patient. And why is it important that we look at it from that standpoint, if you don't mind?
Yeah, sure. I appreciate it, and you always challenge me, Howard, and I love it. And I think it's because they're both, and I'd love Carl to talk about this too. But I think they're patients, and then they are consumers. But I think the patient piece is really, really critical. So I'm glad you brought it up, because health is a big issue right now, and eye health should be a big issue, and people should be even more aware of their health given the coronavirus and how potentially the healthier you are, the better that you can be against that terrible illness. So being a patient is really critical. So doctors should talk that way about eye health, about coming in and an annual exam. But there is a moment in any practice where the consumer then turns into, or the patient turns into a consumer to buy the frames or the contact lenses or whatever. So it's always a fine line to walk.
And, I'm going to let Carl comment on that too, but I would just say with some work we had done back at Essilor, it showed us that in the past, consumers, patients, customers compared us to other optometric practices in terms of how they judged us. I learned a lot from you guys, and I learned that actually today that's very different. In fact, we're compared to best in class of how they're treated anywhere they go. And that's why I totally agree. I think we have to look at it broader. Carl, I'm sure you have a comment on this one. Let's let you weigh in on it.
I guess after 13 years in the industry, I've kind of thought of them very interchangeably, of course. It's like, yes, of course they're consumers. Yes, they're customers. I'm a consumer of dental services. I'm a consumer of primary care. However, I don't, we don't want to lose that patient piece of it too, because I think it elevates us in the mind of the consumer as this is one of the most important things that you need to take care of. And I think in this time, and of course, even studying what's going on with COVID-19, is that we understand that the healthier you are, the better you are. So hopefully coming out of this, we can be somewhat optimistic that people might be paying more attention to their health. Coming out of this. So I look at it and say, yes, we are of course they're patients. Yes, they are customers and consumers, and we all are. We certainly don't want to lose that patient piece too. They are. And they need to put us high in their overall pecking order when we come back. What are the things that are most important? And your vision's critical.
Carl, I'm interested to know your perspective on the relationship between suppliers on the industry side and the ECPs on the care providing side right now, and how would you recommend, coming from a large company like Essilor that is involved with so many practices, how does an ECP reach out to a company like that or to others and relate with one another on how to achieve the common goal of reopening? What part does the industry play for the ECP?
I think the industry is critical, of course. And of course, I am from Essilor, retired from Essilor. So, I want to caveat that for a second. But let me think more broadly about the industry. Is I do think that right now, your premium lens frame alliance partners are thinking about these things at a macro level. They're looking at the consumer. They're looking at what changes will be happening with the consumer. So they have some good information about big global trends, global meaning nationwide, okay? And I think, of course, through your contact with your lens provider, your frame provider, your alliance partner, they can get you in contact with that information. So they're already ready and they're already thinking about it, believe me. Now, that's at a macro level, but I want to lose one point, though. You, as the practitioner in your local community, are the expert in your local community. And your big providers can't necessarily know that. You need to understand what are other businesses in your area, what other medically oriented businesses are doing in this area to come back. And your local dynamics might be somewhat different than the big macro trends. So I'd say right now, get in contact with those providers right now and what's going on that's big, but be a student of what's going on locally in your community as well, because that's certainly shaping your unique patient group.
Yeah, really, really great points, Carl. And maybe I'll throw this one out to both of you. I probably you guys can't even count how many times you've developed marketing plans, I suspect, for products, for programs, for whatever it may be. Understanding that in our practices, we're not big conglomerates, big, multi-billion-dollar companies. But can you give us any advice in maybe a smaller way, and perhaps it's consistent no matter what your size? What do I need to think about when I'm developing a marketing plan? What are kind of some of those key elements to developing a marketing plan. Could you guys help us with that, Dave? Maybe you could kick it off.
Yeah, sure. I'll go back to just some of the basics, right? You've got to know your brand character, know what your practice stands for. The target audience is going to be critical. Who are you talking to? Are you talking to families? You're talking to older folks? What it is you want to accomplish, always critical. And of course, your budget comes into that. So those are the basics. But I think if you start there and think about your practice, what you stand for, why you do what you do. I loved your comment about being human and speak to, thank your patients. Tell your patients we missed you. We can't wait to see you again. Be very human. But I think in the world of marketing and when you're trying to communicate something, you should always start with sort of who you are and then what you're trying to get across. And we could talk about creative briefs and everything else, but that's basically, I think, the basics. And Carl can certainly add to that.
Yeah, I'll add, I think that's exactly where I would start. Understanding who you are, what your distinctive point of differentiation is, why you're better. Not to be overly arrogant, but why is your practice better? And then I'm going to go back and and reiterate the fact of understand all the elements that the patient interacts with you from they first become aware all the way through the optical, through the exam, through follow-up, through rescheduling, and make sure that all those elements scream that why you're different and what your positioning is as a practice. So those are the things. So I agree with Dave completely.
Dave, I think you have some examples or some elements from social media that your practices or a couple of your practices have been utilizing. Do you want to speak to those at all? And I think it goes to tone and those messages that are being communicated that they have to be careful of or aware of.
Perfect. Yeah, if you don't mind just pulling those up, and Carl, you can certainly jump in on these as well. We have. I want to thank Maddie Langston. She's a marketing consultant at IDOC. Put these together because we help with the ways that the doctors can maybe use their social media. So if it's up, is it up? I can't see it, but okay, great. So yes. Just looking at these, right? Some of the key things, tell them when you're coming back. If you feel good that June 1st is when you're coming back, say we're coming back for all your eye care needs. We've missed our patients. Down below, new safety protocols, critical. One of the things I heard doctors say is, look, your doctors to begin with, you do this already. So just say how you're stepping it up and keeping the office clean. And then once you're fully reopened, say you're fully reopened. We're ready for all your eye care needs. And, I like the one on the bottom here. Thank you for supporting your locally owned optometry practice. Supporting local businesses right now is really key. Don't be shy. Ask for that. So these are just a couple examples, and they're not hard to do. These can be put up on Facebook, and I think they can go a long way.
Wow, good stuff, Dave. Thank you. Hey, Carl, maybe a quick question for you. I know you've never had any of these situations happen, Optifog, excuse me, but are there any of the most common mistakes to avoid? I love you, man. I'm just kidding you. But
yeah, that was not one of our most glorious moments, right?
I was right there with you on that one.
I think the biggest mistake, of course, we can make is not listening to the patient and customer and understanding, thinking of that they're going to just come back and be exactly unchanged as they were before after this event. There will be patients like that will be like, well, anywho, I'm glad we're through that and I'm back to regular to what I was before. But I think you can expect that your patients have been profoundly affected. Their degrees of thoughts of health are, of course, different. We've talked a little bit about that. My wife's a family counselor, and we've even talked about what is the increase in agoraphobia, fear of leaving the home that's going to happen. And it's amazing. Her practice is booming. She's got everybody online. And so things, don't expect, that would be the biggest mistake, is if you know your patient's journey, then to expect that they will just follow that same journey. They won't. And you probably could even put your own feelings and your own family's feelings into that and probably be pretty good guess on what they're going to be thinking, or at least many of them will.
Wow. Yeah, critically important. I just want to add to that comment about our own physical well-being and mental health. That's such a critical part. Get out there, get some exercise, do the things you need to do. It's so easy to get sedentary when we're kind of locked in our homes, especially here in Boston. We're really being encouraged to not go out unless you absolutely have to. And I know a lot of people are in that same situation, and you bring up some great points when it comes to that. Dave, maybe just an opportunity for you to comment, mistakes to avoid, just words of wisdom from people who've been in this marketing side for a long time.
Yeah, if you've been in marketing a long time, you've made mistakes. So look, I think one simple one is your Google page. Make sure your hours are right. I mean, I love what you said, Howard. You may have to. So if you Google, you want to say Dr. Brown now open at 7 a.m. to help with scheduling. So it's basic sometimes that go a long way. would be a big one. And then I think the other one, Carl hit on, people are going to be in different mindsets. So be very aware. Don't be too promotional during this time frame. It's not the time to be promotional. It's the time to be calm and sensible and welcome back. And we're here for your eye care needs.
Yeah, I think along those lines, I'm sorry, Howard, but
no, please.
Just one thing that I've been thinking of, and in speaking with a number of ECPs in recent days and weeks, clearly there's a loss in revenue here that's a real-time issue. And as far as communication goes and things that the practices can be helpful with, I'm not sure if we touched on these earlier or not, but what I'm hearing is contact lens renewals and blue light are two elements that are serviceable. Getting people some computer protection from screens, which everybody is on all day long at the moment, so it's relevant. And then contact lens renewals doesn't require the visit or the exam in some situations. I know there may be caveats to that, but if you could speak to those elements for immediate revenue replacement of some portion, is there an opportunity there? Either one of you guys.
Yeah, I think you are absolutely correct that revenue has dipped sharply given practices are closed. But as folks have said, telehealth has stepped in a little bit here, and that's helped, and some of the billing rules have been relaxed.
Yes.
A lot of doctors have contact lens ordering e-commerce capabilities on their website. That's critical. I've seen doctors actually put that when you first come to the website. That's the first page that comes up.
I've seen that too.
And that has helped immensely. Contact lens companies have relaxed the ability to get another annual supply. So the industry is doing great work here. Carl can talk about blue light for sure, but I think bringing the awareness of your lifestyle now and the way that eye care can help in that is really critical.
I think we're getting them in. I agree completely, but we're getting them in a very teachable moment where they're starting to think about their health, and blue light, of course, it's an issue. So I think with all of these things, it's probably an opportunity that some of those messages that you may have felt like you were harping on your patients before and they weren't kind of getting it, they might be in the mood now to get it. So from that standpoint, I think it's probably a good opportunity to reiterate those things that your practice are priorities for your practice.
One thing that I keep thinking about is, my kids, and I know everybody's kids are doing online learning. And so you have these young eyes on screens, not that they weren't before, but it just seems like it's over the top now. Like the kids are on screens all day, and there is protection for that. And it seems like something that can be delivered, especially when you have maybe a non-prescription situation where it's a product that potentially could be delivered.
I think that makes complete sense. And I might make one other point too, is digitally augmenting your practice a little bit. One of the things I've been thinking about is, we always had that shopping experience with the patient who's kind of waiting around, but they're shopping the frame board and they're taking a look for opportunities. Well, your practice may not want to have that kind of traffic in your practice. So how can you in that patient journey digitally augment that shopping experience so you don't lose that opportunity for the consumer to kind of look around at all the possibilities? So there's ways that I think your partners can probably help you say, I may need to augment my practice with some more digital elements of it to recreate and put back in place those shopping elements that might be compromised in a kind of health concerned environment.
And I love looking at that. I'm sorry, from a frame standpoint, right? Like your frame suppliers could help you deliver product. Is that what you're suggesting?
I think so. I think the good ones that are out there are thinking about this already. Is how can I have a shopping experience digitally? I know some practices. I'm thinking dermatology. I was talking to a dermatologist friend of mine. They have their patients wait in the car before they come in. Well, I don't know that we want to do that always. We may, but if we do, we better at least be able to demonstrate what we have and the choices we have digitally, so they can be shopping while they're there.
Yeah, I was just going to add, Carl, thank you. I mean, the teaching moment thing seems so critically important and such a big opportunity for us to engage with our patients and to provide and be that educator. To me, it's just a critical moment for that in helping them better understand it. And we need to demonstrate that as well. So you guys are awesome. You know what I'm going to do? If Eric lets me, I'm going to just hit you with 2 rapid fire questions real quick because we are winding down. There's a lot of really good stuff. So we're going to hit you with 2 and give you a quick and down and dirty answers.
Hey, it's the internet. We don't have a hard out here. We can keep going.
I just like to put as much pressure on these guys as I can. Come on. They know that. They knew what they were signing up for. No. Listen, guys, already some incredible information. I do want to tell you we're getting a ton of questions through YouTube. And those of you who are listening, just want to say we're going to do our best in future dates to answer those questions. Right now, we're just going to try to tap into these guys as best we can and kind of round this up. So first question, how do I know how much to spend and budget on marketing? What I see all too often is we underestimate what we need to invest. And I know this time right now, it may be hard to think about huge investments, but I'm not sure there's a more important investment we can make right now. So maybe in a quick and dirty as best you can, you guys, we'll start with Dave. How do I deal with that? How do I understand how much I should be spending and budgeting for marketing? And I know it's a big question, but is there any way you could give us just some good hints on that? Be great. Dave?
Sure. We usually say about 1 to 5% of last year's top line revenue. Depends on where you are. It might be less in rural, more in the New York area, but I would encourage everybody to do something right now because a lot of people may be not doing something. And if you are out there speaking and communicating, you can take a lead as a result.
Fantastic. Carl, any additional thoughts on?
I'm so glad you asked Dave first because he's got actually an answer that people can remember. This is a question that I get asked all the time. And the truth of the matter is I would say not one dime if it doesn't pay out. Okay, but with all that said, marketing, as I explained earlier, is the entire journey. So it's kind of like how much should I spend on keeping my business current? So there really isn't an upward, depending on how you define marketing. I do think as people are just thinking about it, this 5% line is probably a good line, but the truth of the matter is think about your entire business as marketing and then say, where do you want to spend the money? And then I think you would probably say, well, what I qualify as marketing, that's just a budgetary issue. But my point always, I got asked that question when I first entered Essilor, and I said, well, not one dime if it doesn't pay out, if it doesn't help. So I would always say too, when you're spending money, make sure that you're testing it and reading the results and not spending money that doesn't get you the results that you need for your practice.
Wow. Words of wisdom. All right, I'm going to hit you with one more. We'll start with Carl on this one. Recommended readings or references for our colleagues. And by the way, I want make sure we're a little broader. So we have eye care practitioners listening. We also have industry people and media. What should we be looking at when it comes to marketing, reading, or reference materials that you guys would recommend that you would think would help us to really gear up and understand, to the extent we can, the area of marketing and how critically important it is. Carl, any thoughts on that one?
Man, there are so many great marketing books out there, so I even hate to even bring up one, but certainly there's a couple that are on the elements of marketing I would understand. I'll tell you right now, what I'm reading is this thing called the Wisdom of Crowds, which is maybe more scientific and ethereal, but I think if you read that book, once you get through the basic marketing elements, I think it'll help you appreciate the fact of having a staff and an organization that has many different life experiences will help you actually be a much better marketer because you'll be able to encompass all the different demographics in your area.
Wow.
The Wisdom of Crowds, and it's very good.
That's how timely for today anyway. Even just the title sounds like it's appropriate for our current time. So Dave, anything to add? References?
Yeah, two quick ones I'd say. Simon Sinek's Start With Why, fantastic book. We talk about it a lot at IDOC, why you do what you do. I think when you read that book, it really can inform your marketing and what you're trying to do as a practice. And then Dr. Steve Vargo, who works at IDOC, he's an author. He's got a great book out there, But I Don't Sell, an Eye Care Professional's Guide to Being More Persuasive, Influential, and Successful. It's that point about being a teaching moment. So it's a really wonderful how to help influence and teach your patients about what's really important right now. So those two would be ones I'd recommend.
Good stuff. I don't know, Eric, anything you want to hit these guys with? I think they've done an amazing job in giving us so much to think about, so much good information. On behalf of Eric and I, you guys have kicked off our show, our series in such a great way. We thank you for your time. Thank you for your input. Incredibly valuable as we expected. And just keep on doing the great work you're doing. For you, Dave, just appreciate everything you're doing to continue to support independent optometry. Doing an amazing job, you and your team. Carl, we didn't even talk about the great work you're doing right now with prisoners and trying to get them on their feet. I respect you so much for what you do. I know Essilor misses you a lot, buddy, but they have a great marketing person there now. I'm going to get, I don't mean to suggest they don't, but I know the company misses you. You just made such a difference there. Thank you guys so much for being with us. We really, really appreciate it and look forward to bringing you back to talk some more about the importance of marketing and as we come out the other side of this. So thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it very much.
Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Best of luck to you.
So Eric, that was a lot of fun. Those guys were amazing, weren't
Great
they?
information, and I think it's inspiring to think about moving forward in whatever regard. And you and I have been talking about different elements of this and being trapped at home, and we know that the psyche and the sensibilities of ECPs and professionals across the country is in a rough state. And what I like to think about this is, when you're going through hell, just keep going. Schedule something that you're going to do tomorrow. And if it's setting a few goals along marketing lines, or we're going to talk about HR next week, but setting some goals and setting some timelines and milestones, and small things like handling Facebook posts and social media like Dave was talking about, and organizing your thought process goes a long way.
Yeah, loved it. And I loved it, the journey too. I think Carl described that really well. I think that's a really interesting component. Industry talks a lot about that, but I think it's very important that practitioners and all of us all the industry side, everyone involved should be thinking about that specific journey, very unique to them. The education side, I thought Carl made a great point on that one as well, just making sure we're educating and really looking at it from the standpoint of the patient. And then, balancing that issue of understanding that we have an issue we're going through, there are concerns that patients have, and trying to be very upfront, be human. I think Dave mentioned that as well and reinforced that, being human. I mean, that's great stuff. You mentioned next week, we're going to dive into another really key area, and that's human resources. I mean, our best resource, our most important resource, no matter what business you're in, no matter what area you're in, human resources is really important. We got some great guests, absolutely critical. Alessandro Barani from Rem Del Rigo is going to be joining us, along with the guests he's going to bring along. They're doing some really great work there. Excited about next week. And if you let me, I'd like to perhaps end the show today with just a thought that was shared with me by a colleague and a member of our board of trustees from Harvard, and I thought it was very appropriate for the time. You mind if I just throw this in here at the end, buddy?
Do I mind? Go ahead.
It's a team effort here. I want to make sure you're good with it.
We got time.
Got time. All right. It'll be quick, but I really thought it hit home, and it really deals with the social distancing issue. So it says, I read and heard a lot of good advice this week on how to cope. No doubt you have too. The bit that stuck with me the most came from one of the rabbis in my synagogue. He counseled that we rethink the notion of social distancing, continuing to practice physical distancing, he said, but also social solidarity by making extra efforts to support folks in our various personal communities. I like that idea. As we stay apart, wash our hands, and try to be safe, it's good to remember that we're all in this together. So social distancing, maybe not so much. Physical distancing, for sure. And I really appreciate our guests today. They contributed so much to our thinking around this. Love working with you, Eric. Looking forward to the next few weeks, and hoping that people will join us and they'll find this information valuable. Wish you all very healthy next few weeks until we see you next Wednesday morning at 8:30. Thank you so much for joining us on Inside Vision. Eric, you got the last word, buddy.
The last word is, any questions, comments, show ideas, anything you'd like to say at all, you can hit us at show@insidevision.tv. That's our email. We'll be looking forward to your responses. Thanks again. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you joining us. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for watching Inside Vision. To receive updates about our programming, click subscribe.